I found emails between my son and my husband. Phase 2 complete. She suspects nothing. I froze. Phase 3 was scheduled for my birthday. I smiled, forwarded everything to myself, and started planning. When they walked in for my party, they saw something that made them go pale. Because subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching, get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The printer hummed softly, a familiar white noise in the quiet of my home office. I clicked print on the recipe for Martin's favorite carrot cake, the one I made every year for my birthday celebration. He'd mentioned just this morning how much he was looking forward to it. The thought warmed me as I waited for the document to slide out. A notification popped up in the corner of his computer screen, which I'd borrowed because my laptop was updating. It was a preview of an incoming email. The subject line was stark. Ray, Phase 2 complete. My hand paused over the mouse. Phase 2, Martin was an accountant. His projects had names like Q3 tax prep or audit schedule, not phases. A cold, thin curiosity threaded through me. I moved the cursor. The email opened. It was a chain between Martin and our son, Devin. The most recent message from Devin read, "Dad, transfer confirmed. She suspects nothing. Phase 3 is a go for the birthday. Can't wait for this to be over." Above it, Martin's reply, "Good. The paperwork is filed on my end. Everything is set. Remember, not a word. She'll never see it coming." The words did not compute at first. They were just black shapes on a glowing field. She, me, Phase 3, the birthday, my birthday. The one I was currently baking a cake for. The warmth I'd felt a moment ago congealed, heavy and cold, in my stomach. I scrolled up, my movements mechanical. The earlier emails were clinical. Phase 1 involved asset assessment and emotional evaluation. Phase 2 was financial reallocation and legal positioning. They discussed timelines, sums of money withdrawn from our joint savings labeled condo fund, and deadlines that culminated on the date of my party. The language was cold, a business transaction. The subject was my life. A sound escaped me, not a gasp or a cry, but a short exhale, as if I'd been struck in the chest. I sat very still. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing over my orderly desk, over the framed photo of the three of us at Devin's graduation. We were all smiling. My mind split. One part was screaming, a raw wound of disbelief. The other part, the part that had run a school library for 20 years and managed 1,000 details without fuss, clicked into a detached, silent mode. This was data. This was evidence. I heard Martin's footsteps in the hall. "Regina, you in here." My eyes snapped to the door, then back to the screen. I highlighted the entire email chain. I copied it. I opened my own email account, which was still logged in on the browser tab beside Martin's. I pasted the chain into a new message and addressed it to myself. I typed a subject line, "Carrot cake recipe." I hit send. The doorknob turned. I closed the email tab, leaving Martin's inbox open on the screen just as he walked in. "There you are," he said, smiling. It was his normal smile, the one that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I saw it now as a performance. "Smells good already. Need any help?" "No," I said. My voice was calm, flat. It came from a great distance. "Just printing the recipe. Your computer is faster." He nodded, glancing at the screen. He saw his own email inbox open. He showed no reaction, no flicker of guilt. He had no reason to think I'd seen anything. I was just Regina, his wife of 25 years, baking a cake. "Well, don't work too hard," he said, and left, closing the door softly behind him. I waited until his footsteps receded down the hall. Then I opened the sent folder of his email. I found the Phase 2 complete message. I permanently deleted it. I emptied the trash. I cleared the browser history. I did it all with steady hands. The screaming part of me was now buried under a layer of clear, hard ice. I stood up. The printed recipe was in the tray. I picked it up. The paper was warm. I walked to the kitchen, each step measured. The ingredients were laid out on the counter. Flour, sugar, eggs, carrots I had grated myself. I began to mix. The mechanical action was an anchor. As I stirred, I observed my thoughts as if they belonged to someone else. The betrayal was absolute. My husband and my only child were executing a plan against me. The purpose was clear from their notes: to reposition assets, to orchestrate a separation under my nose, to present me with a finished fact on my birthday. They thought I was oblivious, a kind, fated woman to be managed and then sidelined. The hurt was a physical pressure behind my ribs, but it was being rapidly compressed, transformed by a new, colder emotion, a focused and utterly silent fury. I finished the batter and poured it into the pans. I slid them into the oven and set the timer. The routine was complete. I washed my hands, drying them slowly on a checkered towel. I looked around my kitchen, the heart of the home I had built. It looked the same, but it was not. It was a stage, and I had just been reading from the wrong script. They had their phases: Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 set for my birthday. A plan of my own began to form, not in a rush of emotion, but with the quiet precision of a card catalog being resorted. The first step was confirmation. The second was understanding the full scope. The third would be a response. But not a reaction. They expected a reaction: tears, confusion, defeat. That was part of their calculation. I would not give them what they expected. I opened my laptop. The update was complete. I navigated to my email. There it was, the message I'd sent myself. I opened it and read the cold chain again, this time slowly, memorizing every detail. I saved it in a dedicated folder. I created another folder. I labeled it simply, the recipe. The timer dinged. The cakes were done. I tested them with a toothpick. It came out clean. Perfect. As the cakes cooled on the rack, I went to the living room. Martin was watching the news. Devin was on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, Mom, cake ready soon." "It needs to cool," I said. I smiled back. It felt strange on my face, a flexible mask. "I'm looking forward to this birthday. It feels special." Martin glanced at me from his chair. "It will be," he said, his tone mild, conversational. "You deserve the best." I held his gaze for a second, then nodded and turned toward the hall. "I'm going to sort some books in my study." Once in my quiet room, surrounded by my orderly shelves, I sat at my desk. The initial shock had passed. In its place was a crystalline clarity. The love I had felt for them this morning was gone. It had been a phantom. What remained was the reality of their words, their conspiracy. And my new reality, I knew. They did not know that I knew. That was my advantage. This was no longer just my birthday. It was the deadline for their operation. And now it would become the launch date for mine. I opened a new document. I did not type a title. I began to list in plain, clear terms what I needed to do. The first item was, call a leaner. The woman who had believed she was celebrating a milestone was gone. In her place was someone else, someone who had just read her own obituary and decided to rewrite it. I closed the document. I would not write the plan here. I would carry it, perfect and silent, behind my eyes. From the kitchen, the smell of warm spice and sugar filled the house. It smelled like home. It smelled like a lie. And I decided, in that moment of still and cold resolve, that I would be the one to bake the truth, and I would serve it to them on my birthday. I called a leaner from my study the next morning, using the landline. My voice was as even as the librarian's tone I used for story time. I asked if she was free for lunch. There was a pause on her end. Our lunches were usually planned a week in advance. "Everything okay, Regina?" she asked. "I need to talk," I said. "Somewhere public, the usual place." She understood the subtext immediately. 1 o'clock, I'll secure the corner booth. The morning passed in a performance. I made breakfast, asked Martin about his day, reminded Devin about a job application. I observed them with a new clinical detachment. Martin's casual pat on my shoulder felt like a reconnaissance tap. Devin's distracted "thanks, Mom," for the coffee was a scripted line from an actor who'd already checked out of the play. I smiled and nodded, a curator studying exhibits of deceit. At 12:30, I told Martin I was meeting a leaner. "Girl talk," I said, waving a hand. He nodded, absorbed in the newspaper's financial section, a faint look of relief on his face. My absence was convenient. The cafe was bustling. a symphony of clinking porcelain and cheerful chatter. Elinor was already there, 2 glasses of iced tea on the table. She took one look at my face as I slid into the booth, and her own expression solidified into the focused calm I'd seen her use in court. "Start talking," she said, her voice low. I didn't start with emotion. I started with facts. I handed her a printed copy of the email chain, the words "phase 2 complete" at the top. I watched her eyes scan the lines. Her posture, always perfect, went rigid. Her knuckles whitened where she gripped the paper. When she finished, she placed it flat on the table and looked at me. "Those little bastards," she whispered, the words sharp and precise. A server came. We ordered salads we wouldn't eat. When she left, Elinor leaned forward. "Tell me everything from the beginning. Omissions are liabilities." I recounted the discovery in detail. The printer, the preview pane, my actions afterward. I described the financial terms, the condo fund, the birthday timeline. My voice remained steady. Saying it aloud to her made it more real, but it also made it a case. A problem to be solved. Elinor listened without interruption. When I finished, she sipped her tea, her mind visibly working. Legally, what they're doing is a minefield. The legal positioning Martin mentions, he may have consulted someone. It could be about establishing separate assets, laying groundwork for a separation agreement that favors him. The money transfers are the critical part. Do you have access to all the joint accounts? I have the login credentials. I haven't looked yet. That's our first concrete step. We need a full financial picture. Today, she tapped the printed email. This is your primary evidence. You have the original saved securely. In a cloud folder he cannot access. Good, this is a conspiracy to financially undermine you and orchestrate a humiliating exit. The cruelty is premeditated. Your response cannot be. She fixed me with her dark, intelligent eyes. So, what do you want, Regina? Do you want to leave? Do you want to throw him out? Do you want to burn it all down in court? I had asked myself this all night. The pain was a closed room inside me I did not enter. I focused on the objective. I don't want to run, and a quiet divorce lets them win on their terms. They've planned a spectacle for my birthday. I want to use their own stage. A slow, fierce smile touched Elinor's lips. It held no humor. It was the smile of a brilliant tactician seeing a path. All right, then we don't react, we orchestrate. The birthday is in 3 weeks, that's our timeline. Our goal is twofold. 1, secure your financial and legal position irrevocably. 2, expose their plot in a manner they cannot spin, deny, or escape. Publicly, on their chosen day. The weight in my chest shifted. It was still heavy, but it was no longer the weight of a victim. It was the weight of a plan. What is step 1? First, I need to see those accounts. I'll come over tonight after work. Tell Martin I'm dropping off a book. We'll go to your study. You will log in and we will document everything. Screenshots, statements, transfer records. We build a file. And after that, we design the counter-operation. She speared a piece of lettuce but didn't eat it. They think you're a non-factor, Regina. A kind, oblivious woman to be managed and discarded. That is your greatest weapon. You will continue to be that woman. You will lean into it. You will talk about your birthday with excited, clueless anticipation. You will bake the cake. I already started the cake, I said. Perfect. Meanwhile, we will work. You will, through your own channels, secure the actual birthday venue and services. You will pay for it from an account they cannot touch. Do you have separate funds? My old teacher's credit union account. It has my personal savings. Martin never bothered with it. Use that. Make the birthday party happen, but make it yours. Bigger, better, and full of your people. They are planning some sort of ambush. You will preempt it with a celebration that you control. She paused. This will be emotionally exhausting. You will have to look at them and act loving. I don't feel love, I stated. The words were factual. I feel a commitment to a task. I can act. Elinor reached across the table and squeezed my hand, a brief, hard press of solidarity. Then we will give them a performance they deserve. They wrote the first act. We are writing the finale. We paid the bill. Walking out into the bright afternoon, the normalcy of the street felt like a set piece. I drove home, my mind no longer churning with chaos. It was organizing, filing, planning. Martin's car was still in the driveway. I walked inside, the scent of the cleaning spray I'd used that morning lingering. He was in the living room. "How was lunch?" he asked, not looking up from his tablet. "Lovely," I said, hanging my purse on its hook. "Eleanor sends her regards. She might stop by tonight to drop off that book on constitutional law I wanted." He made a non-committal sound. "That's fine." I walked into the kitchen, my heart a steady, cold drum. I opened my recipe box, a wooden thing I'd had for decades. Behind the card for carrot cake, I slid the printout of the emails, a hidden ingredient. Then I took out my phone and logged into my credit union. The balance was modest but sufficient. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the website of the community center where I volunteered. I looked at the event hall rental page. I noted the coordinator's email, a woman named Sylvia who always greeted me with a hug. Phase 1 of my plan was complete. I had confirmed the betrayal with an ally and established a course of action. Phase 2 would begin tonight, with Eleanor and the cold numbers in our bank accounts. As I put the kettle on for tea, I realized I was no longer waiting for my birthday. I was preparing for it. The cake on the counter was no longer a symbol of celebration. It was a prop, and I was now the director of the play. Eleanor arrived at 7:30, a leather satchel over her shoulder and a thick book in her hand. "You're light reading," she said, her voice carrying into the living room where Martin sat. She held up a dense volume on constitutional law. "Come on back to the study," I said, my tone casual. "I want to show you that first edition I found last week." Martin gave a distracted wave from his chair. "Don't let her talk your ear off about dusty books, Eleanor." "No risk of that," Eleanor replied smoothly, following me down the hall. I closed the study door. The polite mask dropped from both our faces simultaneously. She set the book down and unzipped her satchel, pulling out a sleek laptop, a notepad, and 2 flash drives. "Let's begin." I sat at my desk and woke my computer. My fingers were steady as I navigated to our primary joint banking portal. I entered the username and password, credentials I had used for a decade to pay bills and manage our household. The homepage loaded, displaying checking, savings, and money market accounts. Eleanor pulled a chair close. "Start with the savings account. Look for large withdrawals or transfers over the last 6 months." I clicked. The transaction history scrolled, a familiar log of our life. Automatic deposits from Martin's paychecks, occasional transfers to checking for property taxes, a withdrawal for our anniversary dinner. Then, 3 months ago, I saw it. A single outgoing transfer for $25,000. The memo line read, "Investment diversification." "There," I said, my voice flat. Eleanor leaned in. "Note the date. Where did it go?" I clicked the transaction. It revealed a transfer to an account number I did not recognize, held at a different bank. The account name was listed as *M Carter FBO D. Carter. "For the benefit of," Eleanor murmured. "He set up a custodial account, likely with Devin as the beneficiary. That's the condo fund." Take a screenshot. Save it to the desktop. I did so, the digital click of the screenshot sounding loud in the quiet room. We continued. Another transfer 1 month later, $15,000. Memo, portfolio rebalance. Same destination account. "That's $40,000, I stated. The number was abstract. The meaning was not. It was a down payment. It was my financial security being siphoned away. "Check the money market," Eleanor instructed. That account was worse. It was where we parked larger sums for future goals, a new roof, a potential vacation. The balance was significantly lower than it should have been. A series of 3 withdrawals, each for $10,000, had been made over the past 5 weeks. The memos were vague: capital allocation, asset transfer, financial planning. The total, combined with the savings withdrawals, came to $70,000. A cold, clear number for a cold, clear betrayal. "He's been methodical," Eleanor said, her pen flying across her notepad. "Keeping each transfer under a certain threshold to avoid automatic flags, using bland financial jargon. He's treating your joint assets like a corporate merger he's orchestrating against you." I felt a hollow space open inside me. This was not a crime of passion. It was a clinical dismantling. He mentioned paperwork being filed, legal positioning. Aliner's eyes were hard. I'll run a search on public court records tomorrow. He may have filed a petition for legal separation, or at least initiated consultations. He's creating a paper trail to show he's been financially independent, moving assets to support a narrative of planned division. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the screen filled with numbers that spelled out my obsolescence in their plan. The initial shock had been a sharp fracture. This was the slow, grinding comprehension of the fault line. They were going to leave me with the shell of this house and a stunned expression, I said, and they'd have the new condo and the money. Yes, Aliner said simply. She placed a hand on my shoulder. But they failed at the first rule of a conspiracy. Know your enemy. They never knew you at all. She handed me one of the flash drives. Save every screenshot, every statement from all accounts. Do it now. Then I want you to log into your personal credit union account. We need to confirm your resources. I complied, moving through the steps with robotic efficiency. The documents piled up in a folder I named Tax Prep 2023. My personal account was untouched, as I knew it would be. Its balance was a fraction of what had been taken, but it was mine. Good, Aliner said. That is your operational fund. Tomorrow you will contact Sylvia at the community center. You will book the hall for your birthday. You will pay the deposit from this account. You will act as if you are planning a surprise for yourself, a treat. Can you do that? Yes, the word was definitive. Meanwhile, I will investigate the legal filings and start drafting a countermove, a cease and desist on any further asset transfers. We will also need to formally secure your claim to the marital property. But the primary objective remains the birthday. We use their timeline. She packed her laptop away, leaving the notepad with her written figures. How are you feeling? She asked, her professional demeanor softening a fraction. I considered the question. The grief was a heavy, inert mass like a stone, but it was no longer the dominant feature. I feel focused, I said. The numbers, they made it real. This isn't about affection fatting. It's about a financial and strategic removal. I can fight that. I understand balance sheets. Aliner nodded. Then let's go say goodnight to your husband. We walked back to the living room. Martin looked up. Find anything good in those old books? Just confirming what I already suspected, I said, smiling. The value is in the details. You have to look closely to see what's really there. Isn't that the truth? He said, turning back to his television program. I saw Aliner to the door. Thank you, I said quietly. We're just getting started, she replied. Remember, perform, be excited about your birthday, talk about your cake, your hopes for the day, lull them. After she left, I returned to the kitchen. Devin was getting a glass of water. Aunt Aliner left. She did. We had a good talk. Cool. He took a sip. So you're really going all out for this birthday, huh? I turned to him, my face a perfect picture of maternal warmth. It's a milestone, sweetheart. I want it to be special. A day to remember. He nodded, a flicker of something, guilt perhaps, or just impatience, crossing his face before he smiled. It will be, Mom, I'm sure of it. I held that smile until he left the room. Then I wiped down the already clean counter. The numbers from the screen floated in my mind. $40,000, $30,000, $70,000 total. They were no longer just figures. They were units of betrayal, and I would account for every single one. The paper trail they had created would not lead to my exit. It would lead to their exposure. I picked up my phone and composed an email to Sylvia at the community center. My words cheerful and full of faux excitement for the surprise party I was planning for myself. The performance was underway. Sylvia responded to my email within the hour. Her reply was warm and enthusiastic, as I knew it would be. I called her the next morning from my car, parked outside the grocery store. The performance needed a private stage. Regina, honey, a surprise party for yourself. I love that spirit. Sylvia's voice boomed through the speaker. I've decided it's time to treat myself, I said, layering a light, girlish laugh into my tone. No more waiting for others to read my mind. I want a real celebration with all our friends, the big hall if it's available. For you, let me check. Yes, the date is open. It's yours. We'll make it beautiful. We discussed details. Tables, chairs, a small stage area, use of the kitchenette. I told her I had a nephew who was a whiz with audio-visual equipment and might want to set up a screen for a slideshow. Just some old family photos, I said. A walk down memory lane. How lovely. I'll put you down. The deposit is $500. I'll pop by this afternoon with a check, I said. And, Sylvia, let's keep this between us for now. The surprise is mostly for me, but I'd like to spring the fully planned party on my husband and son, too. They think I'm just baking a cake. Sylvia chuckled, a conspiratorial sound. Your secret is safe with me, dear. See you this afternoon. The first part was secured. I entered the grocery store, list in hand. I moved through the aisles with my usual care, selecting produce, checking expiration dates. I added extra baking supplies to the cart. The mundane task was a grounding ritual. I was a woman planning a birthday. That was the truth they could see. At home, I put the groceries away. Martin was working in his den. I stood in the doorway. You know, I began, my voice bright. I was thinking about the birthday. Maybe we should invite a few more people. The Johnsons from down the street. Maybe some of my old colleagues from the library. He looked up from his computer, a mild irritation flashing in his eyes before he smoothed it into a look of paternal concern. That sounds like a lot of work for you, Regina. We were thinking more intimate, just family. Oh, don't be such a stick in the mud, I said, waving a dish towel playfully. It's my party. I want a crowd. I want music. I've already been looking at catering menus online. This was a risk, but a calculated one. I needed him to believe my enthusiasm was naive and self-directed, not a counter-strategy. He forced a smile. All right, if that's what you want, just don't wear yourself out. Planning it is half the fun, I trilled and left him to his work. I could feel his gaze on my back, assessing, but I knew he would see only what he expected, a woman excited by trivialities. That afternoon, I drove to the community center. I wrote a check from my personal account for the deposit. Sylvia met me in the bustling main hall, where a seniors yoga class was just ending. She hugged me, then handed me a rental contract. It's all set, Regina. The hall is yours from noon to 10. You have the run of the place. Thank you, Sylvia. This means so much. I signed the contract with a steady hand. As I turned to leave, I saw Devin's car pull into the parking lot. A jolt of pure adrenaline shot through me, cold and sharp. What was he doing here? I stepped back into the shadow of the doorway, watching. He didn't see me. He walked with purpose to a silver sedan parked near the back. A man I recognized as Martin's friend, a real estate agent named Greg, got out. They shook hands. Greg handed Devin a large envelope. Devin glanced around, then tucked it under his arm, got back in his car, and drove away. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic counter-rhythm to my calm exterior. I waited a full minute before walking to my own car. The envelope. It could be condo paperwork, floor plans, a purchase agreement. Phase 3 was not an abstract concept. It had a real estate agent. I drove home by a longer route, giving myself time to think. The sight of Devin, so casually collecting the tools of my displacement, solidified the reality. There was no room for sentimental hesitation. The performance was not just a tactic, it was a necessity. That evening, I dialed up my act. Over dinner, I talked incessantly about party ideas. I'm thinking a garden theme, or maybe something elegant in black and gold. What do you think, Devin? He pushed his food around his plate. Sounds fancy, Mom. You sure you want to go to all that trouble? It's no trouble. I have the energy for it. I feel like a new woman. I smiled, wide and vacant. It's like I'm seeing everything with fresh eyes, all the possibilities. Martin and Devin exchanged a glance over the table. It was quick, but I caught it. It was a look of confirmation, of shared understanding that my burst of activity was harmless, even useful. It kept me distracted and happy while they finalized their plans. They were placating me. Well, as long as you're happy, Martin said, reaching over to pat my hand. His touch made my skin crawl. I didn't flinch. I am, I said, my voice full of a brittle joy. I really, truly am. Later, in the privacy of my study, I logged into the county's public property records website. I searched for recent transactions under Greg the agent's name. A new listing for a condominium in a development across town had been posted 2 weeks prior. It was listed as pending. The description matched what a young man like Devin might want: modern, open concept, low maintenance. I took a screenshot. I added it to the Tax Prep 2023 folder, another piece of evidence, another line in their ledger. The next day, I called a local caterer, a small business run by a former student of mine. I booked a modest but elegant spread, paying another deposit from my secure account. I ordered flowers from the shop where I volunteered. I spoke to each vendor with the same cheerful, slightly scattered energy, the persona of a woman delighting in her own celebration. Every conversation, every check written was a thread I was weaving into a net. They were watching me, but they saw only the colorful, fluttering yarn, not the pattern it was forming. I was building my own party on my own terms with my own money, and they, convinced of my docile ignorance, were letting me. Their complacency was the perfect alibi. I was hiding my strategy in plain sight, disguised as the happy, predictable wife and mother they believed me to be. The venue was booked. The machinery was in motion. All I needed now were the players to help me run it. Marcus was the obvious first choice. My sister's boy, a computer science major home for the summer. He was sharp, quiet, and had always looked up to me. I called him and asked if he could help his old aunt with some computer trouble. I suggested we meet at the public library, away from home. He found me at a carrel in the reference section. "Aunt Regina, you're having computer issues. You're the most tech-savvy librarian I know." "This isn't about a computer," I said, keeping my voice low. I opened a folder. Inside was a single sheet with a printed screenshot of the email chain, the words Phase 3 circled. I slid it toward him. "I need you to read this. Then I will tell you what I need. If you cannot or will not help, you walk away now and we never speak of it. No judgment." His brow furrowed. He picked up the paper. I watched his eyes move down the lines. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to a hard, cold anger that reminded me of his mother. He put the paper down. "When did you find this?" 2 weeks ago. "And Uncle Martin and Devin, they're serious. They have withdrawn $70,000. They are purchasing a condo. The plan culminates on my birthday. I am preparing a response." He leaned back, running a hand over his close-cropped hair. He was silent for a full minute. "What do you need from me?" "On the day of the party, there will be a large screen or a projector. I need to display a presentation. It will contain these emails, financial documents, and other evidence. I need it loaded onto a secure drive and ready to play at a specific moment. I need it to be foolproof. I also need to ensure no one can interrupt it, cut the power, or otherwise stop it." Marcus nodded slowly, his technical mind engaging with the problem. "I can do that. I can create a standalone executable file that launches full screen. I can run it from a laptop with a battery backup on a separate, hidden wireless network. Even if someone pulls a plug, it keeps running for an hour. I can also lock the laptop so no one can close the program without a password." "That is exactly what I need." "I'll do it." He looked at me, his young face serious. "They shouldn't get away with this." "Thank you, Marcus. This stays between us. You cannot tell your mother yet. I will inform her myself soon." "Understood." My next call was to my sister-in-law, Brenda, Martin's older sister. We had never been close, but we were cordial. More importantly, she was a practical woman who had never fully approved of Martin. I invited her for coffee at a diner on the other side of town. When she arrived, I did not mince words. "Brenda, Martin and Devin are planning to leave me. They have a coordinated strategy to move assets and present it as a fait accompli on my birthday." She stirred her coffee, her face unreadable. "I'm not surprised about Martin. He's always been a coward. But Devin," she shook her head, "what do you want from me?" "2 things. First, I need you to be at my birthday party. It will be at the community center, not at home." Second, when certain information is revealed, I may need a calm, authoritative voice in the room. Someone the family respects, who can validate that what they are seeing is real. You're going to expose them. I am going to present the facts they created. A small, grim smile touched her lips. Martin always thought you were too soft. He underestimated you. I'll be there, and I'll bring Clarence. Her husband, a retired judge. His presence would add an unassailable layer of gravity. My final recruitment was more delicate. I needed someone within my social circle, a hub of information. I chose Lorraine, a friend from my volunteer work, who knew everyone and everything but was fiercely loyal. I met her after our weekly book sorting shift at the community center. "Lorraine, I need a discreet favor for my birthday," I said as we shelved biographies. "Anything, sweetie. I've invited a number of people, but I want to make sure the invitation list is comprehensive. I want our whole community there. Could you, very quietly, spread the word? Make it sound like a lovely open house celebration for me, but please don't mention it to Martin or Devin. I want it to be a surprise from the community to me." Lorraine's eyes twinkled. "A surprise party where you're in on the surprise? I love it. Consider it done. Everyone will be there." This served a dual purpose, ensuring a large audience and using the community's own gossip network to bypass Martin and Devin entirely. They would assume the guests were my doing, but they would not grasp the scale until it was too late. Each conversation was a transaction of trust. I offered the truth. They offered their skills or their presence. I did not appeal to pity. I presented the situation as a factual problem requiring a solution. Their reactions, Marcus's technical anger, Brenda's grim approval, Lorraine's enthusiastic complicity, gave me something I had lacked: a team. That night, Alina came over after confirming Martin was at a late meeting. We updated each other. She had found the filing. Martin had indeed initiated a consultation with a family law attorney, though no formal papers had been served. "He was laying the groundwork," she said. "But he was waiting for the birthday, for the shock to disorient you before moving forward. A classic abuser tactic." "It's not going to happen," I said. I told her about Marcus, Brenda, and Lorraine. She approved. "You're building a consensus before the fact," she noted. "That's smart. When the truth breaks, you won't be a lone, hysterical woman. You'll be a wronged party surrounded by witnesses and support. It changes the entire narrative." I looked at the list of names on my notepad. Marcus, Brenda and Clarence, Lorraine, Alina, Sylvia at the venue. A network, small but solid, built under the noses of the two men in my house who thought they were the only players. "How do you feel?" Alina asked, repeating her earlier question. "I feel like a conductor," I said. "The orchestra is tuning up. Soon it will be time to play." The performance entered its most critical phase. I had my team, my venue, my evidence. Now I had to wait for Martin and Devin to make the move I knew was coming. I did not have to wait long. 1 week before my birthday, Martin came into the kitchen as I was folding laundry. He had an envelope in his hand and a carefully constructed look of affectionate concern on his face. "Regina, honey, I've been thinking." I looked up, a smile already fixed in place. "Oh. You've been working so hard on this party, running yourself ragged. I feel like Devin and I have been neglectful, letting you do all the work." He held out the envelope. "So, we got you a little pre-birthday treat." I took the envelope. It was heavy, good quality paper. I opened it. Inside was a gift certificate for a full-day spa package at the Oasis, a luxurious retreat on the other side of the city. The date was printed clearly: my birthday. The appointment time was for 9:00 a.m. "It's for the morning of your party," Martin said, watching my face closely. "A full day of pampering. Massage, facial, the works. You'll come home relaxed and radiant, ready to enjoy your celebration. We'll handle any last-minute setup here." The irony was so perfect it was almost artistic. They were purchasing my removal from the premises. The spa was a 30-minute drive away, guaranteed to keep me occupied and oblivious while they executed whatever final steps, Phase 3, required at our house. Perhaps setting up their own minimalist party, the sad precursor to their announcement. or packing the last of their things. I let my eyes widen. I brought a hand to my chest, the picture of touched surprise. "Martin, this is too much." "Nothing is too much for you," he said, the lie smooth and practiced. "You deserve to be spoiled, we insist." "But the party, there might be last-minute things." "Devin and I can handle it," he said, a note of firmness entering his voice. "It's time you learned to delegate, Regina. Let us take care of you for once." I looked down at the certificate again, tracing the embossed lettering with my thumb. I allowed a slight, grateful tremble to enter my voice. "This is so thoughtful, really, a whole day to myself." I looked up at him, letting my eyes shimmer with manufactured tears. "Thank you." He leaned in and kissed my forehead, a dry, perfunctory touch. "You're welcome. It's all settled." After he left the room, I sat at the kitchen table, the gift certificate flat before me. The confirmation was now physical, tangible. They had committed to their timeline. My absence from 9:00 a.m. until likely mid-afternoon was a required component of their plan. This was not a gift of love, it was a tactical maneuver. I did not feel anger in that moment. I felt a scientist's satisfaction at a confirmed hypothesis. I picked up my phone and took a clear photograph of the certificate. I sent it to Alina with a single text. "The invitation to exit stage left has been delivered." Her reply was instantaneous. "Accept with grace. Cancel with precision." That evening, I made a show of calling the Oasis. I did it from the living room, where Martin could overhear. "Yes, hello," I said, my voice bright. "I'd like to confirm a reservation for Carter. For this Saturday at 9 a.m. Oh, wonderful. And it's a full-day package. That sounds divine. Thank you so much." I hung up and turned to Martin with a beaming smile. "It's all confirmed. I can't believe it." "Good," he said, a look of profound relief flashing in his eyes before he masked it with a smile. Devin, slouched on the couch, gave a thumbs up without looking away from his phone. The next day, I called again, this time from my study with the door closed. I asked to speak to a manager. "This is Regina Carter. I have a day package for this Saturday. A family emergency has come up, and I'm afraid I must cancel. I understand it's last minute, and I'll forfeit any deposit. Can you please process the cancellation?" The manager was understanding. The appointment was removed from the book. I asked for a cancellation email for my records, which she sent. I now had proof I had canceled. The certificate was still valid for a future date, a small, bitter asset to reclaim later. With my alibi from their perspective firmly in place, I began the real work for that day. I called Marcus. "The schedule is confirmed. I will be at the spa from 9 onward. I need you at the community center by 8:30 to begin the AV setup. Use the back entrance. Sylvia will let you in." I called the caterer and the florist, confirming delivery times for noon. I called Brenda. "The party starts at 4. I would appreciate if you and Clarence could arrive by 3:30. Your presence will be stabilizing." Finally, I went over my own checklist. I had a garment bag holding the elegant navy dress I'd bought for myself, hanging in the back of my closet behind old winter coats. My shoes, my jewelry, everything was ready at Alina's house. I would go there after pretending to leave for the spa. On the Friday night before my birthday, Martin was unusually attentive. He asked if I needed help packing my spa bag. He suggested I get a good night's sleep. His performance of the caring husband was meticulous, and it made the charade all the more nauseating. I went to bed early. I did not sleep. I lay in the dark, running through sequences, contingencies. The gift certificate was on my nightstand, a white rectangle in the gloom. It was the key they thought would lock me out. Instead, it was the trigger that would spring my trap. They had given me the perfect cover, the perfect excuse for my absence while I prepared their reckoning. The gift was not a kindness. It was a weapon they had handed me unwittingly, and I knew exactly how I would use it. The morning light was gray and soft when I woke. I moved through my routine with deliberate calm. I showered, dressed in the simple yoga pants and top I'd told Martin I would wear to the spa. I packed a small tote bag with a towel, a water bottle, and a novel, props for a day of relaxation. In the kitchen, Martin was already making coffee. "Big day," he said, his voice hearty. I'm a little nervous, I admitted, which was true, though not for the reason he believed. It feels strange to be so self-indulgent. Nonsense, enjoy it. He poured a cup and handed it to me. What time is your appointment? 9. I should leave by 8:15 to find the place and check in. Devin shuffled in, still in his pajamas. Have fun, Mom, he said, not meeting my eyes. I will. You two be good. Don't mess up my kitchen if you're doing any last-minute things for tonight. I let a playful warning tone enter my voice. We'll keep it tidy, Martin assured me. At 8:10, I picked up my tote bag and my purse. I gave Martin a quick kiss on the cheek. His skin felt cool and impersonal. See you this afternoon, I said. We'll be right here, he replied. I walked out the front door, got into my car, and started the engine. I backed out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw the front curtain twitch. Martin was watching me leave. I turned left at the end of our street, the direction toward the highway that led to the oasis. I drove 2 blocks, then turned right. I drove 5 more minutes, following a route I had mapped out days before, and pulled into Alina's driveway. She was waiting at the door. Status, she asked as I stepped inside. Departure confirmed. They were watching. Good, come on. Your command center is ready. She led me to her guest room. Hanging on the closet door was my navy dress, pressed and ready. My shoes and jewelry were laid out on the bed. On the desk sat a large, sealed envelope. The finalized presentation, loaded on 2 separate drives as backup. Marcus dropped it off an hour ago. He's already at the venue setting up. I changed out of my spa clothes. The dress fit perfectly. I fastened a simple necklace, my mother's pearls. I looked in the mirror. The woman who looked back was poised, her expression composed, her eyes clear and steady. The anxious wife was gone. You look formidable, Alina said from the doorway. I feel focused. I picked up the envelope. Shall we? We took her car. She drove while I reviewed the mental checklist. Caterer, noon. Florist, 12:30. Guest arrivals starting at 3:30. Party start, 4. My speech, 4:45. We arrived at the community center at 9:30. Sylvia let us in through the side service entrance. The main hall was a vast, empty space, but I could already see the potential. Marcus was on a ladder, adjusting a large projection screen at the front of the room. A high-quality projector was mounted on a ceiling beam. Aunt Regina, he said, climbing down. The system is operational. I have the file loaded on a laptop here and a backup on this tablet. He showed me a sleek machine. It's on a closed network. The laptop is connected to the projector. The slide advance is remote-controlled. He handed me a small, black clicker. Press the green button to start. The red button is a kill switch, but you won't need it. The presentation runs automatically after the first slide. No one can interrupt it without the admin password. I took the clicker. It was light in my hand. Excellent work, Marcus. There's one more thing. He opened a folder on the laptop. I took the liberty of adding a final slide, a screenshot of the condo listing from the real estate site with the pending, status, and the agent's contact info clearly visible. I thought it would tie things together. I looked at the slide. It was the final physical proof of their intended future. It's perfect, thank you. By 11, tables were being unfolded and set up by the center's staff under Sylvia's direction. By noon, the caterer arrived with warmers and trays. The scent of roasted chicken and herbs began to fill the hall. At 12:30, the florist came, transforming the head table with arrangements of white roses and greenery. Alina and I oversaw everything. I directed table placements to ensure a clear view of the screen. I tested the microphone at the podium. My voice, when I said check 1, 2, was firm and echoed slightly in the space. At 2 o'clock, I stood in the center of the hall. The transformation was complete. Round tables were draped in crisp linen. Chairs were neatly arranged. The head table looked elegant. The screen was a blank white rectangle, silent and waiting. The room was cool and quiet, holding its breath. It's ready, Alina said, coming to stand beside me. They will be at the house now, I said, my voice low, setting up whatever pathetic little alternative they had planned, or packing. They think I am miles away, being rubbed with scented oils. And in 2 hours, they will walk in here expecting a subdued wife and a quiet gathering. Elinar's smile was sharp. The shock will be visceral. I nodded. I felt no pity, no anticipatory guilt. I felt the clean, sharp alignment of cause and effect. They had set a trap for me. I had simply moved the location and reset the mechanism. Now, all that was left was for them to walk into it. I went to the small preparation room off the main hall. I checked my reflection once more. I took a deep breath, the kind I used to take before starting a story time for a room full of restless children. This was just another presentation. The stakes were simply higher, and the audience included the 2 people who had bet everything on my ignorance. I heard the first voices in the outer hall, the catering staff making final adjustments, Sylvia giving instructions. The quiet hustle before the storm. I closed my eyes for a moment, not in prayer, but in concentration. Every piece was in place. The only thing left to do was to play my part. The first guests arrived at 3:40. It was Lorraine, of course, with her husband in tow, followed by a cluster of women from my volunteer group. They streamed into the hall, their eyes widening at the transformation. "Regina, this is gorgeous." Lorraine enveloped me in a hug that smelled of gardenias. "You did all this." "With a lot of help," I said, smiling. "Thank you for spreading the word." "Oh, honey, everyone was so happy to come. You're beloved, you know that." The room began to fill, a rising tide of familiar faces and warm greetings. Colleagues from my library days, neighbors, friends from my book club, members of the community center board. Sylvia had outdone herself with the decorations, and the catered food drew appreciative murmurs. The hall buzzed with conversation and laughter. It was, by any measure, a wonderful party. Elinar moved through the crowd like a general, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Marcus stood sentinel near the tech setup, a silent guardian of the screen. I circulated, accepting compliments on the party, deflecting questions about my surprise with a mysterious smile. "I just decided to go all out for myself," I told several people. "Life's too short." At 4:15, I saw Brenda and Clarence enter. Clarence, with his judge's bearing, commanded a quiet respect. People nodded to him. Brenda caught my eye and gave a slight, imperceptible nod. The cavalry had arrived. 4:20, 4:25. I felt a cold anticipation settle in my stomach. I stood near the entrance, a glass of sparkling water in my hand, smiling and chatting. At 4:32, they appeared. Martin pushed open the main door, Devin just behind him. They were dressed in casual clothes, khakis and polo shirts, out of place amid the party attire. They had expected a small, somber gathering at home, not this. The expression on Martin's face was a frozen mask of confusion. His eyes swept the crowded, decorated hall, the laden buffet tables, the smiling guests, and finally landed on me. He saw me in my navy dress, pearls, standing radiant and composed at the center of a room full of people who adored me. Devin's mouth was slightly open. He looked younger, suddenly, and afraid. I moved toward them, my smile widening. "Martin, Devin, you're finally here," my voice carried. Several guests turned to look. I embraced Martin. His body was rigid. What is all this?" He whispered into my ear, the words strained. "My birthday party," I said brightly, pulling back to look at him. "You said to go all out, so I did. Surprise." I turned and hugged Devin, who stood like a wooden post. "Thank you for the spa day, sweetheart. It gave me the whole morning to put the final touches on everything." Martin's face cycled through shock, dawning comprehension, and a desperate attempt to regain footing. He forced a smile, but it was a grimace. You canceled the spa." "Oh, I called and rescheduled," I said airily, linking my arm through his. "This was more important. Come, say hello to everyone." I led them into the room, a tour guide of their own nightmare. I introduced them to people they already knew, my grip on Martin's arm firm. "Look at this amazing spread Martin encouraged me to get," I told the Johnsons. "He's always saying I should treat myself." Martin's replies were monosyllabic. "Yes, thank you, lovely." Devin trailed behind us, silent. He accepted a plate of food but didn't eat. His eyes kept darting to the large, blank screen at the front of the room, then to Marcus standing nearby. He knew something was wrong. He could feel the architecture of their plan crumbling, but he couldn't see the new structure being revealed. I watched them from across the room as I chatted with Alina. They stood together, two islands of anxiety in a sea of celebration. Martin checked his watch repeatedly. Devin scrolled on his phone, likely texting his father. "She's here. The party is huge. What do we do?" Their plan had no contingency for this. Their Phase 3 was designed for a vulnerable, isolated woman returning from a spa to a quiet house and a devastating announcement. It was not designed for a woman commanding a room of 100 supporters. At 4:40, I caught Alina's eye. She gave a single, slow nod. It was time. I felt a profound stillness descend upon me. The noise of the party faded to a distant hum. I walked to the podium. I adjusted the microphone. I tapped it lightly. "Hello, everyone. May I have your attention, please?" The room gradually quieted. Faces turned toward me, expectant and warm. Martin and Devin were near the back. Martin's face was pale. Devin had stopped looking at his phone. I smiled out at the crowd, my community, my real family. "Thank you all so much for coming today to help me celebrate," I began, my voice clear and steady through the speakers. "It means more than you can know." I paused, letting my gaze sweep the room. A birthday is a time for reflection, for gratitude, and sometimes for surprises. I looked out at the sea of familiar, smiling faces. I'm so grateful for this community, for friends who feel like family. My eyes found Martin and Devin at the back of the room. Martin had crossed his arms. Devin was staring at the floor. And of course, for my family. Family is our foundation, isn't it? The people we trust above all others. A gentle murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "Trust," I continued, letting the word hang in the air. "It's a precious thing. It's built over years through small acts and shared history. We believe we know the hearts of those closest to us." I paused, a deliberate, calculated silence. Sometimes we receive reminders of how precious that trust is, and sometimes we receive other kinds of reminders. I saw Martin's head come up, his eyes locked with mine. I held his gaze, my expression serene. "A few weeks ago," I said, my voice still warm, "I received an early birthday gift, an enlightening one. It wasn't wrapped in pretty paper. It didn't come with a bow, but it showed me the true nature of some things. And I believe when you receive a gift, you should share it." Martin took a step forward. "Regina," he said, his voice too loud in the quiet room. It was a warning, a plea masquerading as a husband's gentle interruption. "Maybe this isn't the time for long speeches. Let's enjoy the party." I smiled at him, a smile of pure, cold steel. "Oh, but this is the perfect time, Martin. This is exactly the time." I turned back to the microphone. "You see, this gift was a lesson in planning, in meticulous, long-term strategy. It was about phases." At the word phases, Devin flinched as if struck. Martin's face lost its remaining color. "So," I said, my tone conversational, as if discussing the weather, "I thought on my birthday I would share what I learned, a little presentation. Consider it my thank you to all of you for being part of my life." I looked toward the side of the room where Marcus stood ready. I gave him a small, clear nod. "Marcus, sweetheart, could you start the slides for me?" Time seemed to slow. Martin moved, pushing his way between two guests, his hand raised. "Regina, don't." But it was too late. Marcus pressed a button on his tablet. The projector hummed. The large, white screen at the front of the hall went black for a second, then illuminated. The first slide was not a family photo. It was a crisp, clear image of the email chain. The subject line, Ray, Phase 2 complete asterisk, was blown up large enough for the entire room to read. Below it, the cold, brief exchange was visible, with Martin's and Devin's email addresses clearly shown. A collective, sharp intake of breath filled the hall, then utter silence. I stepped slightly to the side, turning to watch the screen as if I were merely another audience member. I watched the faces of my guests as their eyes scanned the words. She suspects nothing. Phase 3 is a go for the birthday. Confusion first, then dawning, horrified comprehension. Heads turned from the screen to look at Martin and Devin, who stood frozen, then back to the screen. The presentation advanced automatically, as Marcus had programmed. The next slide showed a scan bank statement with the $25,000 transfer highlighted. The memo, investment diversification. The following slide showed the $15,000 transfer, then the series of $10,000 withdrawals from the money market account. Each slide was clean, annotated with a simple red arrow and the date. The total, $70,000, was displayed in bold at the bottom. A low murmur began, a wave of disbelief and anger. Martin found his voice. "This is a misunderstanding," he shouted, striding toward the front. "Those are private documents. This is slander." The slides continued, merciless. Next was the screenshot of the real estate listing for the condo, the pending status visible, along with the name of Martin's friend, the agent. Then, the photograph of the spa gift certificate with the date of my birthday clearly circled. The presentation connected the dots with brutal efficiency. The emails, the money, the condo, the manipulative gift to remove me, it was all there. I walked back to the podium as the final slide, a simple black screen with the words Phase 3, revealed in white type, appeared. I turned to face the room. The warmth was gone from my voice now. It was clear, calm, and carried to every corner. "No misunderstanding, Martin," I said, looking directly at him. He had stopped halfway down the aisle, paralyzed by the stares of 100 people. "This is your plan. You and Devin, you labeled it. You funded it. You set the timeline for my birthday. You simply didn't expect me to read it." Devin made a choked sound. He had backed up against the wall, his hands over his face. I addressed the room again. "You are all my witnesses. You have seen the evidence they created. This was not a spontaneous decision. It was a plotted financial and emotional exit strategy devised against a wife and mother who trusted them." I paused, letting the weight of it settle. They thought I would be a victim. They thought I would be quiet. I turned my gaze back to the two of them. The room was utterly still, waiting. "Phase 3 was you leaving me," I said, my voice dropping, yet every syllable sharp. "My Phase 3 is you being seen. Now everyone knows who you are." I let the silence stretch for 3 full seconds. Then I raised my arm and pointed toward the main doors at the back of the hall. "The door is that way." For a long moment, no one moved. The screen behind me still displayed the stark words, "Phase 3, revealed." The silence was absolute, a vacuum filled with the weight of what everyone had seen. Martin broke it. He took a step forward, not toward the door, but toward me, his hands spread in a plea. "Regina, please, we can talk about this. It's not what it looks like." His voice was strained, cracking under the pressure of 100 hostile stares. It was the voice of a man whose script had been torn up. From the crowd, Brenda's voice cut through, calm and authoritative. "It looks exactly like what it is, Martin. We all have eyes." A rumble of agreement followed. A man from my book club, a retired engineer, stood up. "You need to leave, Martin. She asked you to go." Martin looked from face to face, seeing no allies, only condemnation. His gaze finally landed back on me, searching for a weakness, a trace of the forgiving woman he knew. He found none. My expression was as settled and unmovable as stone. Devin pushed off from the wall. His face was streaked with tears. "Mom," he choked out. I did not look at him. I kept my eyes on Martin. "Now," I said, the single word final. Martin's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a shamed, furious defeat. He turned, grabbed Devin roughly by the arm, and began to pull him toward the back of the hall. The crowd parted silently, creating a path to the double doors. No one spoke to them. No one offered a conciliatory word. They moved through a tunnel of averted eyes and stony silence. I watched them go. I felt nothing but a cold, clean finality. The door swung shut behind them with a soft, decisive thud. For another second, the room remained quiet. Then Lorraine stood. She walked to the front, wrapped her arms around me, and held me tight. "You brave, brilliant woman," she whispered. That broke the spell. A wave of sound rose, voices of support, outrage on my behalf, murmurs of disbelief. People crowded around, touching my arm, offering words. My circle of recruits formed a protective perimeter. Eleanor at my right, Brenda and Clarence at my left, Marcus quietly closing the presentation and shutting down the screen. Eleanor leaned in. Legally, you are on impeccably solid ground. Public exposure was the right strategic move. It neuters any narrative they could have spun. Thank you, I said. My voice was steady, but a fatigue was beginning to seep into the edges of my awareness, the aftermath of sustained tension. Clarence approached, his judge's demeanor calm. Regina, if you wish, I can recommend an excellent litigator for the divorce proceedings. The evidence is incontrovertible. The financial malfeasance alone will ensure a very favorable settlement. I would appreciate that, Clarence. Thank you. The party did not end. It transformed. The food was eaten, the music, which had stopped during the presentation, was turned back on, softer now. Conversations buzzed, not about the weather or local gossip, but about what had just happened. There was a palpable sense of collective justice, of a wrong being righted in their midst. I was no longer just Regina the librarian. I was Regina who had faced down betrayal and won. After an hour, the crowd began to thin, people coming to say goodbye with hugs and promises of support. Call me if you need anything. We're here for you. Their sincerity was a tangible warmth. Finally, only my inner circle remained. Eleanor, Brenda, Clarence, Marcus, and Sylvia, who was helping the catering staff clean up. Eleanor handed me a glass of water. What now? I looked around the hall, now quieting, the glitter of the party giving way to the practical reality of cleanup. Now I go home, to my house, and I change the locks tomorrow. Do you want company tonight? Brenda asked. I shook my head. No, I want to be in my own space, alone. I need to feel it as mine again. They all understood. They helped gather my things. Marcus packed his equipment. The file is archived in 3 separate places, Aunt Regina. It's safe. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Eleanor drove me home. We did not speak much. The night was clear and cool. When she pulled into my driveway, the house was dark. Martin's car was gone. You're sure? Eleanor asked. I've never been more sure of anything, I said. I let myself in. The house was silent, but the silence was different. It was not the quiet of waiting or of hidden schemes. It was simply empty. I turned on the lights in the living room. I walked to the kitchen. The carrot cake I had baked days before, the one for the birthday that never happened at home, sat under a glass dome on the counter. I took a plate. I cut a slice. I sat at my kitchen table in the heart of the home I had built and defended, and I ate it. It was perfectly moist, spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg. It tasted sweet, and it tasted like victory. The next morning, I called a locksmith. I called the lawyer Clarence recommended. I began the process of legally separating my life from Martin's, a process made straightforward by the evidence we had. I heard through the community grapevine that Martin had moved into a short-term rental. Devin was staying with a friend. The condo deal had fallen through, the financing unraveled. They were not pariahs, but they were viewed with a permanent, cold disdain. Their betrayal had been witnessed, and in a community like ours, that meant everything. My birthday had come and gone. It was not an ending, but a definitive beginning. The woman who had discovered an email with a trembling hand was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her own strength, surrounded by a chosen family who had stood with her in the fire. The revenge was not in the humiliation, though that was part of it. It was in the reclaiming. I had taken back my narrative, my dignity, and my home. And as I sat in my sunlit kitchen, planning not a counter-strategy but simply my next day, I knew the best revenge of all was the peace that followed, and the unshakable knowledge that I had been, and would always be, enough.